They say hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. They've never met a man whose soul was systematically dismantled, piece by agonizing piece, by the one person he vowed to cherish. This isn't a story about a quick, explosive rage. No, this is about a different kind of fury. A colder, more calculating beast. This is the story of how I watched the woman I loved betray everything we built, and how, in return, I meticulously, painstakingly, and beautifully destroyed her most precious dreams. If you've ever felt the searing burn of betrayal, if you've ever wished for justice when the world offered none, then you understand the depths of this tale. Hit that like button if you believe in karmic retribution, and subscribe to hear more stories of vengeance served cold. Now let's begin. The scent of turpentine and linseed oil used to be my comfort. It clung to Sarah's clothes, permeated our home, and for a decade it was the smell of her passion, her lifeblood, her utter devotion to the canvas. She was an artist, you see, not the weekend hobbyist kind, but a true, driven visionary. Her studio, the converted attic of our modest Victorian home, was her sanctuary, her battlefield, her entire universe. And I was her staunchest supporter, her silent partner in creation, the steady hand that kept the world at bay so she could paint. Our life wasn't glamorous, but it was rich in shared dreams, in quiet evenings spent discussing her latest composition, in the unspoken understanding that flowed between two people building a life together. I worked as a software engineer, the steady provider, the anchor. She was the sail, catching the winds of inspiration, pulling us forward into a future I genuinely believed was painted in vibrant, lasting hues. Her magnum opus, the series she'd been working on for 5 years, was called Echoes of the Unseen. 12 monumental canvases, each one a breathtaking exploration of human emotion, rendered with a raw vulnerability that would leave you breathless. She poured every fiber of her being into them. Sleepless nights fueled by cheap coffee, early mornings spent chasing the perfect light, the physical ache in her shoulders a testament to her dedication. I remember finding her asleep on her studio floor once, a half-eaten sandwich beside her, her hand still clutching a brush, a smudge of cobalt blue on her cheek. My heart swelled with a fierce pride. That woman, my Sarah, was extraordinary. Then came David. He was her gallerist. Smooth, charismatic, with an air of effortless sophistication that made me, in my comfortable sweaters and practical shoes, feel like a relic from a bygone era. He waltzed into our lives like a perfectly orchestrated storm, all flattering smiles and hushed admiration for Sarah's talent. At first, I was grateful. He saw her genius, truly saw it, in a way few others did. He spoke of major exhibitions, international acclaim, the kind of future Sarah had only dared to whisper about in our most intimate moments. I trusted him. I trusted her. Fool. Utter, unadulterated fool. The changes were subtle at first. A new lightness in her step, a more frequent, almost conspiratorial smile when she spoke of gallery meetings. She started dressing differently, sleeker, more intentional. Her old paint-splattered jeans were replaced with tailored trousers, her casual blouses with silk. Professionalism, Mark, she'd say, catching my eye with a glint that now, in retrospect, looks like guilt. David thinks it's important for my image. I nodded, ever the supportive husband, oblivious to the cracks forming beneath my feet. The late nights became more frequent. Gallery events, she'd explain, her voice a little too bright, her eyes a little too evasive. Networking. It's crucial, Mark, for the exhibition. I'd stay home, a solitary figure in our quiet living room, the empty space beside me in bed growing colder, wider. I tried to call, just to say goodnight, but her phone would often go straight to voicemail. Bad reception at the gallery. Darling. She'd apologize the next morning, her breath smelling faintly of wine, not turpentine. The first real crack in my carefully constructed reality wasn't a visual, but an auditory one. I was working from home one Tuesday, a rare day off for me, when Sarah's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She was in her studio, lost in her world. Curiosity, a venomous serpent I usually kept caged, unwound itself and nudged me forward. It was a text from David. Missing you already. Last night was unforgettable. Can't wait to see you again soon, my muse. The words seared themselves into my retina, burning a hole through the placid facade of my life. Unforgettable. My muse. The world tilted on its axis. My hand started to shake, a tremor that originated deep in my gut and spread outwards, making my vision blur. I picked up the phone, my fingers fumbling, and scrolled through their messages. A sickening tapestry of clandestine meetings, whispered endearments, and graphic details of their shared intimacy unfolded before my horrified eyes. Dates, times, locations. His apartment. Hotels. Even, God forgive her, our apartment on evenings I worked late. My wife. The woman who slept beside me, who shared my dreams, who painted masterpieces born of a sensitivity I thought I knew, was a stranger. A liar. A cheat. The pain was physical, a sharp, twisting knife plunged deep into my chest, stealing the air from my lungs. I sank onto the kitchen floor, the cold tiles a stark contrast to the inferno raging inside me. The smell of turpentine suddenly felt cloying, suffocating, no longer the scent of comfort, but of deceit. I spent the next few hours in a haze, the world outside my head a distant, muffled echo. I didn't confront her. Not then. The shock was too profound, the betrayal too immense. I felt hollowed out, drained, but beneath the desolation, a flicker, a tiny spark of something else began to ignite. Not sadness, not even anger, not yet. It was a cold, quiet realization. She had taken everything, my trust, my peace, our shared future, and replaced it with a gaping wound. And in doing so, she had shown me her true face. A selfish, opportunistic, and utterly cruel stranger. That night, she came home humming, a slight flush on her cheeks, a smile playing on her lips that once would have melted my heart. Now it just chilled me to the bone. Long day, darling, she said, breezing past me. David wants to push for the summer exhibition. It's all moving so fast. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw only the carefully constructed lie. The artist, the devoted wife, the muse, all of it a performance. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. My mind raced, replaying every whispered secret, every late night, every evasive glance. Each memory, once a cherished pearl, now felt like a shard of glass, tearing at my insides. I lay beside her in bed, listening to her soft, even breathing, and felt an icy detachment settle over me. The man I had been, the man who loved her unconditionally, died that night. In his place, a new entity stirred, dark and nascent, fueled by a terrible, beautiful clarity. That night, she came home humming, a slight flush on her cheeks, a smile playing on her lips that once would have melted my heart. Now it just chilled me to the bone. Long day, darling, she said, breezing past me. David wants to push for the summer exhibition. It's all moving so fast. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw only the carefully constructed lie. The artist, the devoted wife, the muse, all of it a performance. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. My mind raced, replaying every whispered secret, every late night, every evasive glance. Each memory, once a cherished pearl, now felt like a shard of glass, tearing at my insides. I lay beside her in bed, listening to her soft, even breathing, and felt an icy detachment settle over me. The man I had been, the man who loved her unconditionally, died that night. In his place, a new entity stirred, dark and nascent, fueled by a terrible, beautiful clarity. She had built her life, her identity, her very soul, around her art. It was her everything. And as I stared at the ceiling, the moon casting long, skeletal shadows across our bedroom, a single, chilling thought solidified in my mind. If she could destroy my world, brick by brick, with such casual cruelty, then I would return the favor. Not with anger, not with shouts, not with the messy drama of a public confrontation. No, I would find her most precious thing, her most vulnerable creation, and I would dismantle it, piece by piece, accidentally, and she would never truly know if it was fate or if it was me. The thought was a dark comfort, a promise whispered to the silent night. The days that followed were a waking nightmare of performative normalcy. I smiled when she spoke of her art, offered insightful critiques, and even helped her stretch new canvases. Each interaction was a fresh wound, a fresh indignity. My internal monologue was a roaring storm, but on the surface, I was a placid lake, reflecting only what she wanted to see. The weight of the secret, the betrayal, and the nascent plan for vengeance pressed down on me, making my chest ache, my breath shallow. I lost weight. My colleagues noticed the dark circles under my eyes. "Everything all right, Mark?" they'd ask, their voices laced with concern. "Just a lot on at work?" I'd lie, the words tasting like ash. My sleep was fragmented, filled with vivid, agonizing replays of her text messages, David's smug face, and Sarah's carefree laughter. I'd wake in the dead of night, heart pounding, drenched in a cold sweat, the phantom pain in my chest a constant reminder of my brokenness. Yet, with each sleepless hour, the initial shock gave way to a hardened resolve. The pain, once debilitating, began to morph into fuel. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about self-preservation. It was about reclaiming some semblance of dignity from the wreckage of my life. One evening, I watched her from the doorway of her studio, engrossed in her work. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, a streak of cadmium red on her temple. She was alive, vibrant, utterly absorbed in her passion. And I realized, with a chilling clarity, that this was where I had to strike. Not her, not directly, but at the very core of what made her her. Her art, her legacy. Echoes of the Unseen was almost finished. The final canvas. The culmination of half a decade's work. My first thought was a crude, immediate destruction. A bucket of paint stripper. A knife to the canvases. But that would be too obvious, too satisfyingly direct. She would know. She would rage, mourn, accuse. And I didn't want her rage. I wanted her confusion, her self-doubt, her slow, agonizing realization that something precious was slipping through her fingers, something she couldn't blame on anyone, not definitively. It had to be an accident, a series of unfortunate, tragic accidents. The plan began to coalesce, insidious and precise. I started observing her habits, her vulnerabilities with a cold, clinical eye. Where did she keep her most important tools? Her preparatory sketches? Her notes? Her journal? The very essence of her creative process? I became a phantom in my own home, moving silently, watching, cataloging. The first target presented itself almost too easily. Sarah kept all her preliminary sketches, her color studies, her foundational ideas for Echoes of the Unseen in a large, leather-bound portfolio. It was meticulously organized, each drawing a step in the evolution of her vision. She called it her creative spine. Without it, she'd still paint, but the organic, deeply personal progression of her series would be irrevocably broken. One sunny afternoon, she was out, meeting with David, no doubt. I found the portfolio tucked away on a high shelf in her studio, beneath a pile of old art books. It was heavy, worn, and smelled faintly of charcoal and graphite. I carried it carefully down to the kitchen. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of anticipation and trepidation. This was it. The first step. I filled the sink with water, adding a generous amount of industrial-strength cleaner I usually use for the garage floor. The kind that ate through grease and grime, leaving behind a faint, acrid smell. I left the portfolio balanced precariously on the edge of the counter, partially obscured by a stack of clean dishes. Then I turned on the faucet, a slow, steady drip, aimed perfectly at the spine of the portfolio. I walked away, my breath held tight in my chest, and waited. It took hours. The drips were slow, agonizingly so, each one a tiny erosion of her carefully preserved work. I sat in the living room, pretending to read, my ears strained, listening for the sound of her key in the lock for the inevitable discovery. When I finally heard her car pull into the driveway, I rushed back to the kitchen. The portfolio was sodden. The water had seeped in, staining the leather dark, buckling the pages. The cleaner, activated by the moisture, had begun to dissolve the graphite and charcoal, turning the intricate sketches into blurry, unrecognizable smudges. The vibrant color studies had run together, a muddy, pathetic mess. It looked like an old book left out in the rain. An accident. A terrible, unfortunate accident. I grabbed a dish towel, a look of carefully feigned horror plastered on my face. "Sarah, oh my God, what happened?" I exclaimed, my voice laced with a concern that was sickeningly hollow. She rushed in, her eyes widening, then narrowing in disbelief as she saw the ruined portfolio. She snatched it up, her hands trembling, pulling open the sodden clasps. Her breath hitched. A small, wounded sound escaped her lips. No, my sketches, my Echo's sketches." She flipped through the pages, her face a mask of escalating despair. "They're ruined, Mark. Completely ruined. The water, the cleaner, it's destroyed everything." Tears welled in her eyes, hot and angry. "I'm so sorry, darling. I must have left the faucet dripping. I was cleaning the sink earlier, and I didn't notice. Oh, Sarah, I feel terrible. Let me try to dry them." I reached for the book, but she recoiled, clutching it to her chest like a dying child. "Don't touch them," she choked out, her voice raw with grief. "It's too late. It's all gone. Years of work just dissolved." She sank to the floor, the ruined portfolio clutched to her chest, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I knelt beside her, putting an arm around her, patting her back awkwardly. The performance was flawless. "I'm so sorry," I murmured again, my voice a soothing balm. Inside, a cold, hard satisfaction bloomed. The first strike. Subtle. Accidental. Devastating. She spent the rest of the evening in a haze of grief, trying to salvage what she could, but it was useless. The damage was irreversible. The raw emotional pain on her face was a chilling reflection of the pain I had felt when I discovered her betrayal. But hers was mixed with an almost childlike confusion. How could something so vital, so meticulously protected, be destroyed by such a mundane, stupid oversight? The next few days were difficult. Sarah was subdued, her usual vibrant energy replaced by a heavy pallor. She spent hours staring blankly at the ruined sketches, then at her unfinished canvases, a flicker of fear in her eyes. "It feels like the universe is conspiring against me, Mark," she confessed one morning, her voice small. "Like I've lost my way." I met her gaze, a carefully constructed mask of empathy in place. "Don't be silly, love. It was a terrible accident. You're an incredible artist. You'll find your way back. You always do." The words were designed to soothe, to reassure, to lull her back into a false sense of security. But inside, I knew I had taken her creative spine. Now it was time to move on to her heart. And her heart, I knew, resided in the finishing touches, the intricate details that would elevate Echoes of the unseen from mere paintings to masterpieces. Her palette knives. She had a collection of antique, hand-forged palette knives, each one a unique shape, a distinct weight, passed down from her grandmother, also an artist. She swore by them, so they connected her to her lineage, to the very spirit of creation. She kept them in a beautiful, velvet-lined wooden box, tucked safely in a drawer in her studio. Irreplaceable, essential for her distinctive style. I waited for another of her gallery meetings. The house was quiet, filled only with the rhythmic tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. I went into her studio, the air heavy with the ghosts of ruined sketches. I found a box, lifted the lid. The knives gleamed, each one a testament to craftsmanship and history. I took them one by one to the garage. My hands were steady, my resolve unwavering. I placed each delicate, hand-forged blade on the concrete floor, then picked up my heaviest hammer. The first strike sent a jolt up my arm, a sharp, metallic clang echoing in the confined space. The blade bent, buckled, rendered utterly useless. The second, the third, the fourth. Each blow was a release, a small victory against the tide of my own pain. The satisfying crunch of metal against concrete, the delicate curve of a blade collapsing under force. When I was finished, the beautiful tools were grotesque, twisted parodies of their former selves. I placed them back in the velvet-lined box, making sure the lid closed securely. No visible damage to the box itself, just the silent, internal destruction. She found them the next morning. I was in the kitchen, making coffee, when I heard a gasp, sharp and sudden, from the studio. Then a choked cry. I rushed in, my face a carefully practiced blend of confusion and alarm. "What is it, Sarah? What's wrong?" She was standing over the open box, her face pale, her eyes wide with horror. She picked up one of the mangled knives, holding it up as if in disbelief. "My knives, Mark, they're ruined. Who would do this? How did this happen?" Her voice was rising, a frantic edge creeping in. I feigned shock. "Ruined? But they were in the drawer, weren't they? How could they be ruined?" I reached for one, my brow furrowed with concern. "It looks like they were hammered. But why? And how?" She dropped the knife, her hands flying to her mouth. "I don't understand. I never take them out of the studio. No one else has a key. Mark, did you see anything? Did anyone come into the house?" I shook my head, my face a picture of bewildered innocence. "Not a soul, love. I've been here all night. Are you sure you didn't accidentally drop something heavy on the drawer? Or maybe someone broke in? But there are no signs of forced entry." I let the thought hang in the air, a seed of paranoia I hoped would take root. Her shoulders slumped. No break-in. It's impossible. And I would never. I'm so careful with these. They were my grandmother's. They're irreplaceable." Her voice cracked, a desperate wail escaping her lips. "First the sketches, now the knives. What's happening, Mark? It feels like everything is falling apart." I put my arm around her, pulling her close. "It's just bad luck, darling. A string of terrible accidents. We'll get you new knives, the best ones we can find." The lie tasted like victory. I hugged her tighter, burying my face in her hair, breathing in the fading scent of turpentine. She was crumbling, and I was her only comfort. The exhibition was looming, just weeks away. The pressure on Sarah was immense. She tried to work, but the destroyed sketches and the mangled knives had taken their toll. Her confidence was shaken. She struggled with the final touches, her hand hesitant, her spirit dulled. I watched her, a silent observer of her unraveling, and felt a perverse sense of justice. She had shattered my trust with a cavalier disregard. Now, I was shattering her dreams with calculated precision. The ultimate target was the canvases themselves. Echoes of the unseen. The 12 majestic paintings, almost complete. The crown jewels of her artistic life. But I couldn't simply destroy them. That would be too obvious, too satisfying for her to pin on me. Too clean. No, it had to be a slow, insidious decay. Something that would make her question her own judgment, her own perception. The day before the official delivery to David's gallery, Sarah spent hours meticulously varnishing the finished canvases. It was a painstaking process, each stroke carefully applied to protect the paint and bring out the depth of color. The scent of varnish filled the studio, a sharp, chemical aroma that usually signified the end of a long, arduous journey. That night, as she slept, exhausted, I slipped into her studio. The varnished canvases stood proudly on their easels, gleaming under the soft moonlight filtering through the attic window. I carried a small, unlabeled spray bottle in my hand. Inside, a mixture I had carefully concocted, a clear, highly acidic solution, diluted just enough so that its effects wouldn't be immediately apparent. It wouldn't melt the varnish, not outright, but it would subtly, slowly, over a matter of days or weeks, begin to degrade it. It would dull the colors, make the surface brittle, and eventually cause the varnish to crack and peel, taking tiny flakes of paint with it. It would look like a manufacturing defect in the varnish, or perhaps a terrible reaction to the gallery environment. A silent killer hidden in plain sight. I moved from canvas to canvas, my hand steady, my heart a cold stone in my chest. A fine, almost invisible mist settled on each painting, each stroke a whisper of my quiet vengeance. It was meticulous, precise, and utterly ruthless. The scent of the solution was faint, easily masked by the stronger odor of the fresh varnish. When I was done, I replaced the spray bottle in my hidden compartment and slipped back into bed, lying beside her, listening to her deep, even breaths. The final act was set in motion. The ultimate blow, delivered in the dark, unseen, unheard. The next morning, she packed the canvases, her face still tired, but a flicker of hope returning to her eyes. "They're beautiful, Mark," she said, her voice soft with a mix of pride and apprehension. "I just hope they make it to the gallery safely." I smiled, a genuine, unsettling smile that never reached my eyes. "They'll be fine, love. They're masterpieces." She kissed me then, a light, absent-minded kiss on my cheek. And for a moment, I saw the ghost of the woman I had once loved. But the image quickly faded, replaced by the bitter reality of her betrayal. And with it, the unwavering conviction that what I was doing, what I had done, was not just justified, but absolutely necessary. The canvases were gone, off to David's gallery, off to their slow, agonizing demise. And Sarah, my cheating wife, was left with a growing sense of unease, a gnawing suspicion that something was terribly wrong, but no concrete proof, no one to blame. She was adrift, caught in a tide of inexplicable misfortunes. And I, her devoted husband, was just getting started. The storm was brewing, and she, oblivious, was about to be caught in its silent, destructive path. The silence in the house after Sarah's canvases left was deafening. It wasn't the comforting silence of shared peace, but the heavy, suffocating quiet of a battlefield after the initial skirmishes. Sarah tried to regain her stride, to refocus on new projects, but her energy was fractured. The accidents had left deep scars, not just on her art, but on her psyche. I watched her from the shadows, a silent, attentive observer of her slow unraveling. She'd spend hours in her studio, staring at blank canvases, the vibrant spark in her eyes dimmed. "I feel disconnected, Mark," she'd confess, her voice small. "Like I've lost my touch. Every time I pick up a brush, I see those ruined sketches, those mangled knives. It's like a curse." I'd offer platitudes, words of encouragement that felt like acid on my tongue. "It's just a creative block, darling. Every artist goes through it. You'll find your way back." Each lie was a fresh brick in a wall I was building between us, a wall of calculated deceit. But the most potent sting was yet to come, the slow, public degradation of her magnum opus. 2 weeks after the canvases were delivered, the call came from David. I answered, as Sarah was in shower. His voice was laced with a thinly veiled frustration, though he tried to mask it with professional concern. "Mark, is Sarah around? I need to speak with her. It's about the Echoes series." "She's in the shower, David. Is everything all right?" I asked, a tremor of feigned anxiety in my voice. My heart, however, was thrumming with a dark anticipation. "Well, not entirely. We've noticed some issues with the varnish on a few of the pieces. It started to dull, and in some areas it's cracking. We're not sure why. It's quite unusual for a professional varnish." A cold smile touched my lips. "Oh dear, how unfortunate. I'm sure Sarah will be devastated. She spent so much time on them." "Indeed. Look, I'll call back later. Just wanted to give you a heads up." He hung up, his frustration palpable even through the phone line. I relayed the news to Sarah, my face a picture of sympathetic sorrow. She rushed to the gallery, her hope replaced by a frantic fear. She called me an hour later, her voice trembling. "Mark, it's true. It's worse than I thought. The varnish on 3 of the canvases is visibly compromised. David is furious. He says it looks unprofessional. He's going to have to pull them from the main exhibition space, relegate them to a back room, or worse, not show them at all." Her voice broke. "My entire series, Mark. My Echoes. 5 years of my life, potentially ruined because of a faulty varnish. How could this happen? I used the best quality. I was so careful. It's just terrible luck, love," I said, my voice carefully modulated to sound comforting. "Some things are just out of our control." But they weren't out of my control. They were meticulously orchestrated. The news of the faulty varnish spread like wildfire through the local art scene. David, eager to protect his reputation, was subtly, but effectively shifting the blame onto Sarah. Whispers followed her: unprofessional, careless, substandard materials. The reputation she had painstakingly built over years began to fray at the edges. The public humiliation was a slow, agonizing torture, far more effective than any direct confrontation. Her art, the very core of her identity, was being publicly discredited. I watched her wither. The light in her eyes dimmed further. She spent less time in her studio, more time staring out the window, a haunted look on her face. Her affair with David, once a source of illicit thrill, now seemed to wither under the weight of professional disappointment. I saw them together once at a local cafe, their body language stiff, their conversation strained. The shine had gone out of their secret romance, replaced by the dull ache of shared failure. The turning point came one evening, roughly 3 months after the accidents began. We were at dinner, a silent, tense affair. Sarah picked at her food, her appetite long gone. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a raw, desperate pain I hadn't seen since the first few days of our marriage, after her mother passed. "Mark," she began, her voice barely a whisper, "I can't do this anymore. Everything is falling apart. My art, my career. David is barely speaking to me. He says the gallery's reputation is being damaged. He even suggested I might be stressed and perhaps overlooked some critical steps in my process." Her voice was thick with tears. He implied it was my fault. I watched her, my expression carefully blank. She didn't know the half of it. "And you," she continued, her gaze piercing, "you just watch. You offer empty words. Do you even care, Mark? Do you even care what's happening to me?" The question hung in the air, laden with unspoken accusations. For a fleeting second, I saw a flicker of the old Sarah, the one who challenged me, who saw through my facades. But then the mask slipped back. "Of course, I care, Sarah," I said, my voice gentle, almost mournful. "You're my wife. I'm just trying to be supportive, to give you space. I'm doing my best to be here for you." It was a lie, a masterstroke of manipulation. My best was tearing her world apart. She looked at me for a long, agonizing moment, then sighed, a sound of profound defeat. I feel so alone." She pushed her plate away, the food untouched. I think I need to get away for a while. Clear my head. Maybe go visit my sister in Vermont." And in that moment, as I watched her slump in her chair, utterly defeated, something shifted inside me. The raw, burning need for retribution, for equal pain, began to cool. Not because I felt pity. No, never pity. But because I saw the true extent of my success. She wasn't just hurt. She was broken. Her spirit, the very thing that made her an artist, was fractured. The initial plan for the slow, agonizing destruction of her art had worked. But now it was time to refine it, to make it more personal, more devastating. I had taken her art, her public reputation. But there was still something else, something even more deeply ingrained, more intimately tied to her identity. Her private sanctuary, her passion beyond the public eye. I remembered a conversation from years ago when we were first married. She had spoken, with shining eyes, of a secret dream, to cultivate the rarest, most exquisite orchids in the world. Not for exhibition, not for sale, but for the sheer joy of nurturing life, of coaxing beauty from fragility. She had even dedicated a small, sun-drenched conservatory off the living room to them, a space she called her Eden. Her orchid collection, it was her quiet escape, her solace, especially in these dark times. She tended to them with the delicate touch of a surgeon, the patience of a saint. Each bloom was a triumph, each new leaf a small miracle. It was the only place left where she found genuine joy, where the shadows of her professional failures couldn't reach. That, I realized, was the final, most exquisite blow. To poison her Eden subtly, tragically, like a cruel twist of fate. The planning was meticulous. I spent hours online, researching orchid care, specifically looking for common, easily overlooked environmental hazards. I learned about their delicate root systems, their sensitivity to airborne chemicals, their need for specific pH levels in their watering solutions. The more I learned, the more insidious the possibilities became. The crucial element, I had decided, would be a new cleaning solution. We had a cleaning service that came once a month, but I usually handled the daily upkeep. I'd switch out our regular, mild floor cleaner for something more potent, something that wouldn't immediately kill the plants, but would introduce a slow, cumulative toxicity. Something with airborne volatile organic compounds that would seep into their delicate systems over time. Something that would look like an unfortunate, unavoidable natural decay. I found it a heavy-duty industrial cleaner, advertised as cutting through anything. It came with a warning about proper ventilation and skin contact. Perfect. I bought a small, discreet bottle, transferring a portion into an unmarked spray bottle, and hid the rest. Sarah left for Vermont a week later, seeking refuge from her collapsing world. I drove her to the airport, a picture of solicitous concern. "Get some rest, darling," I told her, kissing her cheek. "I'll take care of everything here. Your orchids will be waiting for you, blooming." The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth, yet satisfying. The moment she was gone, I set about my grim task. I cleaned the house meticulously, as I always did. But when I reached the conservatory, I brought out my special solution. I diluted it slightly, just enough so the smell wouldn't be overpowering, but the chemical agents would still be active. I sprayed it liberally on the floor, on the windowsills, even on the terracotta pots. I used it to wipe down the glass panels, ensuring a fine mist of the chemical permeated the air. I made sure to leave the conservatory windows and door closed, trapping the toxic fumes inside, giving them ample time to settle into the delicate ecosystem. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic act of destruction. It was a slow, invisible poisoning. Over the next few days, I repeated the process, just small amounts, enough to maintain a consistent level of airborne toxins. I even used it to wipe down the tools she used for the orchids, ensuring residual contact. The orchids, vibrant and healthy when she left, would slowly, subtly begin to sicken. Their leaves would yellow, their blooms would wilt prematurely, their roots would rot from within. It would look like a blight, a fungal infection, something natural, something unavoidable. Another cruel twist of fate. I also, with a surge of cold, almost clinical triumph, removed one small, crucial element from her carefully cultivated Eden. Her prized Vanda orchid, a rare, cobalt blue specimen she had nurtured from a seedling for years, was the undisputed jewel of her collection. It represented her ultimate triumph as an orchidist. I carefully removed it from its pot, replanted it in a generic, cheap plastic pot, and drove it to a distant nursery, a good hour away, where I anonymously donated it, claiming I was downsizing my own collection. I knew they would find a good home. It wasn't about destroying the plant itself, but about its absence from her life, from her Eden. When she returned, she would count her plants, notice the missing jewel, and wonder, desperately, where it had gone. Another ghost in her unraveling world. As I drove away from the nursery, a profound sense of closure settled over me. The cycle was nearly complete. She had taken my trust, my peace, my future. I had taken her art, her reputation, and now, her solace. The score was, in my estimation, perfectly even. She called me from Vermont a few times. Her voice was still tinged with sadness, but also with a nascent calm. "It's beautiful here, Mark," she said, her voice softer. "I'm getting some perspective." "That's good, love," I replied, a carefully constructed warmth in my tone. "Your orchids are doing well. I'm watering them carefully." Another lie, another nail in her coffin. The days stretched into weeks. The house remained meticulously clean, the conservatory is silent, ticking time bomb. I felt a strange lightness, a grim satisfaction. The constant ache in my chest had receded, replaced by a quiet, steady hum of vindication. The torment of betrayal, once an all-consuming fire, was now a manageable ember. I was no longer the victim. I was the architect. The time for her return was approaching, and with it, the final act of my meticulously planned revenge. She would walk into her Eden, seeking comfort, seeking solace, and find only withered leaves, dying blooms, and a gaping emptiness where her most precious jewel once stood. and she would never truly know if it was fate or if it was me, her loving husband, who had so carefully, so completely orchestrated the ruin of her world. The anticipation was a potent, intoxicating drug. The stage was set. The week leading up to Sarah's return was a blur of nervous anticipation for me. I continued my care of the conservatory, ensuring the subtle chemical assault on her beloved orchids was ongoing. Each day, a few more leaves yellowed, a few more vibrant blooms sagged, their petals curling inward like dying breaths. The air in the conservatory, though I aired it out just before her arrival, still held a faint, almost imperceptible tang of the industrial cleaner, a ghost of the poison I'd unleashed. When I picked her up from the airport, she looked different. Not healed, but certainly calmer. The frantic edge was gone, replaced by a quiet resignation. She even managed a small, genuine smile when she saw me. "Thanks for picking me up, Mark," she said, her voice soft. "It was good to get away. I feel a little more myself." "Glad to hear it, love," I replied, forcing a warmth in my voice that felt like a betrayal of my own carefully constructed rage. The contrast between her tentative peace and the devastation awaiting her at home was a cruel irony I savored. As we drove, she spoke of her sister, of long walks in the autumn leaves, of quiet mornings spent reading. She didn't mention art. She didn't mention David. It was as if she had intentionally walled off that painful part of her life, choosing to focus on the small, simple comforts. My heart, still a cold stone, registered this shift. She was trying to rebuild, and I was about to demolish her last sanctuary. We walked into the house, and she breathed a deep sigh. "Home," she murmured, a wistful note in her voice. "It's good to be home. Your orchid are doing wonderfully, by the way." I lied smoothly, watching her carefully. "I've been diligent with the watering." A flicker of genuine hope brightened her eyes. "Oh, good. I can't wait to see them." She headed straight for the conservatory, her steps light with a fragile optimism. I followed her, my heart thumping a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. This was it, the climax, the moment of truth. She pushed open the glass door to the conservatory, and the faint, sweet, sickly smell of wilting orchids hit us. Her smile faltered. Her steps slowed. Her eyes widened, scanning the once vibrant space. The sight was devastating, even to me. The usually lush, green leaves are now mottled with yellow and brown. Many of the delicate blooms were shriveled, their vibrant colors faded to a sickly pallor. Some had simply dropped off, littering the pristine white floor like fallen hopes. The usually humid air felt heavy, tainted. What happened?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. It wasn't an accusation, just pure, unadulterated shock. She moved through the plants, touching a yellowed leaf here, a shriveled bloom there, her fingers trembling. "They're sick, Mark. All of them. It looks like a blight, but I've never seen anything like it. It's so widespread." I put on my most convincing mask of concern. "Oh my God, Sarah. I don't know. They seemed fine yesterday. I watered them just this morning. I don't understand it. Could it be a disease? Did something get in from outside?" She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "No, it's not just one or two. It's almost everything. And look at the soil. It looks wrong." She knelt, scooping up a handful of the potting mix, her brow furrowed in confusion. "The roots on this one are rotting, but I've been so careful with the watering." Then, her eyes landed on the empty space where her prized Vanda orchid once hung. The hook was still there, but the plant, her cobalt blue jewel, was gone. Her breath hitched. "My Vanda," she whispered, her voice a raw, wounded sound. "Where's my Vanda, Mark?" It was right here. My carefully constructed facade threatened to crack. This was the hardest part. The missing jewel. "Your Vanda?" "Oh, Sarah, I don't know. It was here when you left. I swear. Maybe just fell down?" "No, that's silly. It was hanging so securely." I looked around frantically, feigning confusion. Could it have been stolen? But why just one plant? She didn't answer. She just stood there, staring at the empty hook, then at the dying plants around her. The realization, slow and agonizing, began to dawn on her. Not a direct, conscious realization, but a deeply unsettling sense that something profoundly wrong, something malevolent, was at play. First my sketches, she said, her voice a flat monotone, then my knives, then my exhibition, and now my Eden. Everything, Mark, everything I cherish, everything I pour my soul into, is being systematically destroyed. And I don't understand why. I don't understand how. Her gaze met mine, and for the first time, I saw not just confusion, but a flicker of suspicion. A tiny, nascent spark of doubt in her perfect husband. I hardened my resolve. Sarah, please, don't talk like that. It's just a string of awful coincidences. Bad luck. I'm here for you. We'll fix this. We'll find out what's wrong with the plants. We'll get you new ones. We'll get you a new Vanda. She just shook her head, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. You don't understand, Mark. It's not just about the plants. It's about everything. It feels like my life is falling apart piece by piece, and I can't stop it. That night, she didn't come to bed. I found her hours later, curled up on the sofa in the living room, a thin blanket wrapped around her, her eyes wide open, staring into the darkness. She was broken, utterly and irrevocably broken. The weight of her artistic failures, the public humiliation, the inexplicable destruction of her most cherished passions, it had finally crushed her. The community's perception of Sarah was irrevocably altered. The art world is ruthless, and her faulty varnish became a cautionary tale. David quietly distanced himself, their affair ending with a whimper, not a bang. She was seen as careless, unreliable, a talent that had somehow faded, and no one, not even David, connected it to her once devoted husband. The following weeks were a slow, agonizing process of her retreat. She abandoned her studio, the door remaining shut, the scent of turpentine replaced by the musty smell of disuse. The conservatory, once a vibrant sanctuary, became a silent graveyard of dying plants. She stopped painting. She stopped caring for her orchids. The fire that had burned so brightly within her, the very essence of her being, had been extinguished. One afternoon, a few months later, she sat across from me at the kitchen table, her hands clasped tightly, her gaze distant. I want a divorce, Mark, she said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. I can't do this anymore. I can't be here. It feels poisoned. My heart gave a strange lurch, not of pain, but of a chilling triumph. The divorce, the public split, would be another blow to her, a further confirmation of her unraveling life. But the true victory was far more profound. I had not just ended a marriage. I had systematically dismantled the woman she was, the artist she aspired to be. If that's what you want, Sarah, I replied, my voice calm, controlled. I'll support your decision. I only want you to be happy. The ultimate lie. The divorce was swift and relatively amicable, at least on the surface. She took very little, mostly her personal belongings, some clothes, a few old sketchbooks from before the Echoes series. She left the house, the studio, the dying conservatory. She left her art. She left her dreams. I stood in the doorway, watching her drive away, a small, solitary figure in a car packed with the remnants of a life. The house felt strangely empty, yet also clean. The lingering scent of turpentine was gone. The air felt lighter, untainted by deceit. I walked into the conservatory, now truly a wasteland. Dead leaves and shriveled stems littered the floor. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of decay. But I felt no remorse, only a deep, abiding sense of vindication. She had taken my world, my trust, my future, and she had done it with a casual cruelty that had almost destroyed me. I had returned the favor, not with anger, but with precision. I had not broken her body, but her spirit. I had not destroyed her property, but her passion. And she would never truly know if it was fate or if it was me. I looked at my reflection in the dusty glass of the conservatory door. The man staring back was different, harder, wiser. He had endured a betrayal that would crush most, and he had emerged, not unscathed, but victorious. The ghost of the loving husband was gone, replaced by a colder, more formidable presence. The revenge was complete, and it was in its own silent, devastating way truly beautiful. Years have passed since Sarah left. The house is still mine, though the studio remains locked, a silent monument to a talent extinguished. The conservatory, too, is empty, reclaimed by me for a small, functional home office. There are no orchids now, no art, just the quiet hum of my computer, the steady rhythm of a life rebuilt. I sometimes see glimpses of Sarah, online or in local news, but she never paints. She works in a quiet, unassuming office job, far removed from the vibrant art world she once inhabited. The light in her eyes, once a beacon of creative fire, has never returned. She lives, but the artist within her, the passionate, driven woman I once loved, is gone, and she still doesn't know why. The world sees me as the stoic, decent man whose wife inexplicably fell apart and left him. They offer sympathy, words of comfort. They admire my resilience. And in a way, they're right. I am resilient. I endured the pain, the betrayal, and I forged it into something potent, something precise. Revenge, they say, is a dish best served cold. I found it to be a meticulous, methodical art form. And in the quiet satisfaction of her shattered dreams, I finally found my own peace. It wasn't the kind of peace I once envisioned, not the kind painted in vibrant hues. But it was a peace, nonetheless. A chilling, powerful, and utterly deserved peace. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt the profound ache of injustice and the quiet yearning for retribution, then you're not alone. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe justice was served? Would you have done the same? And if you want to hear more tales of vengeance, of lives irrevocably changed by betrayal and meticulously orchestrated revenge, then make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell. Until next time, remember, some wounds never truly heal, but some debts are always eventually paid.